Hello everyone. Welcome to episode 25 of Wasted Wanderers. I think it's episode 25. I've stopped counting. But if it is, Abhi, we are 25 episodes in. So let's see if we can get to 50 by the end of the year. Uh, we hope you guys are having a great week so far. The long weekend is coming up, and Abhi and me will be off actually next week. So let's get to some stories. So we have handpicked three top stories to talk about this week. The first one is about the latest in the saga of US and Canada negotiations on trade. Last week, it has actually escalated really fast. So let's talk about it. So basically, the trade deal collapsed between Canada and US slammed 50% tariffs on Canada. So, what did the Prime Minister of Canada do? He declared an economic war. So, it's a death of an old alliance. After the last minute trade negotiations collapsed, the US imposed a 50% tariff of approximately 20 billion CAD worth of Canadian exports. Um, and the thing is, these two sides were very close to a deal. I think Trump even tweeted that the deal is some days uh, ahead. But I think some demands by the US, like restricting independent trade deals with other countries and extracting some exclusive access to critical minerals, that ticked Carney off. And so he said that the partnership between the two allies is officially over. So now what happens? Now the dollar to dollar retaliations resume again, right? So Canada isn't backing down, and it's announcing matching dollar for dollar counter tariffs that will kick in on September 8th. So the Canadian levies will specifically hit US sectors like steel, aluminium, agricultural equipment, dairy, electronics, and paper products. So while Carney has acknowledged that these duties will raise consumer costs at home, uh, some subsidies will be rolled out for the domestic industries, and he's warning that it could be a prolonged multi year economic confrontation. Now, personally, I feel like this is not a good thing for both countries, especially Canada. Like, we are just fighting among ourselves for what? Like we're joined to the hip, and just like this, just small nuances, because of them we are like just fighting over the big stuff. So it is a trade off, right? Everything is a trade off. So this is a trade off between strategic leverage and economic risk. I personally think that Canada actually possesses significant structural leverage. So even Prime Minister Carney reminded reporters that Canada supplies 99% of US natural gas imports, 85% of its electricity imports, and 60% of the crude oil, right? That's like the heart of the US economy. They can force Washington back into a negotiation table if they want. I think that's what they're going to do. I mean, look at what China did with rare earth metals. So US threatened China few years ago with some tariffs. So China withhold some really important rare earth metals, and then they called US bluff and then got them back to the neutral position in negotiation. So again, this is a developing story. I really want to hear your thoughts on this, Abhi.
So I think what has happened here is, firstly, if I have to look at Donald Trump, President Trump, and Mark Carney, PM Carney, as two um, two two people on a project. President Trump is the ever optimistic project manager, because the project manager always has the impetus to actually report like everything is going great, even though it almost certainly never is. And PM Carney is the, the technical developer. Let's think of it as a software agile project. So PM Carney is like that technical developer who's like, I don't know what's going so great, just because today I was trying to test a pipeline, um, and it didn't even hit my, you know, I couldn't even log in using my continuous deployment pipeline. So I'm not sure what's going so great. And this is kind of what we saw in the messaging over the past week. So President Trump comes out and says that we are very close to a deal. We are giving a 3-day, 3-day pause on the 50% tariffs, blah, blah, blah. And PM Carney is coming out and saying that there is still work to be done. We are working towards it, but we're making progress, but it's not over yet. And then on Friday, everything just fell apart. Or I guess Saturday was, I guess yesterday we started getting all these notifications, right? So on the left on our screenshot, on our slide here, we have the two Canadian articles. Carney walks away, now Canada faces the tariff fallout. To me, the most interesting news is the fact that the premier of Alberta, which is probably the most closely US aligned province of Canada in that sense, is the premier of that province is now saying admits US trade demands were too painful. Now, if we go into the details of this article, and then on the right we have basically two news stories which are out of US news sources. So I think over here we have Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. Now, to JD's point, this is a lose-lose for both sides. Canadian tariffs don't go into effect till I think Labor Day, so I think there's 2-3 more weeks in that, at least here in Canada. So they're not going immediately into effect, right? So if you want to buy a new iPhone, I think for Canadians now is the right time to do it. But all jokes aside, I think the numbers could have been worked out. I don't think the numbers were a problem. The auto tariffs from 25% down to 15% tariffs. Okay, loosen your dairy industry a bit. All these technical things, kind of, they could have probably been worked out. Now, PM Carney did make a specific statement here, and with respect to Ford's new plant, for example, in Oakville, Ontario, which is F350s, 450s, 550s, they would have been excluded. GM Silverado, same thing, would have been excluded from that. No rationale, just for exclusion. With respect to the auto industry, both in terms of the level of the tariff, the treatment of the Canadian contents of Canadian parts, all this was on the table. The proposed deal with the Americans isn't the one that PM could sign and sell to the Canadian public. Carney delivered a speech. So I think where this fell apart was some of the last minute, at least from the Canadian side, these were last minute additions to the to the paperwork that was already gonna get signed, and there was language around Canada not being able to sign other trade deals with other countries, and there was some language around, okay, the Canadians have to soften down on the French requirements. Now, personally, when I'm walking down a store aisle in Vancouver in British Columbia, and I suddenly I have to read a nutrition label, and I suddenly start having to read French. I'm like, oh no, I need to rotate this box, look at the other side for the English. It is annoying. Having said that, it is exactly that dual identity that's been sort of existing as a country for 150 years is what makes Canada unique as well. So that just became a no no. Now, do I find it absurd that Quebec is always sort of bullying Canada to bullying, Canada, the federal structure, to, always do its own thing and then otherwise, oh, we'll try to separate from you? All that is fucking annoying, no doubt. But it is also those separatists who came out and said that we will not have any separatist votes till the current administration in the US exists, like for the next 2 years, basically. So I also think there's a lot of hot air in that. Like they know they don't want to separate. It's just something to try and keep squeezing an inch more, an inch more. Quebec basically has its own immigration system, and then eventually they have to follow the federal system, so their points get translated to the federal points and blah 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 blah. So do I find it annoying? Yes. Do I also think that that's what makes Canada unique? Yes. Alberta is a very interesting case. They are now looking to have a separatist not revolution, but like a referendum. Sorry, um, and Danielle Smith is saying that okay, we'll have that vote still. And in this news, she's also saying that just being more diplomatic with the US does help because Alberta's exports to the US are the least affected by these 50% tariffs. BC is going to get affected. Lumber, one of the big ones. Ontario is going to get affected because automakers. So a lot of the premiers in Canada have come out and said that this is a positive move. It's positive in emotion, but my take is Canada now needs to brace for a challenging time for the next 3 to 5 years. I'm pretty sure the government had gamed for a no deal scenario, and I'm pretty sure they're gaming for further tariffs. Like for everything that this news is, it actually only affects 5% of Canada's exports to the US. 5%. It is still a it's a non-trivial number, but it's still only 5%. So there will be most likely more uh, tariffs coming from the US, and I think with all the deals and all the trade negotiations that Canada is in with China, with India, with Japan, South Korea, all the countries that are looking for natural gas, oil in the world, I think PM Carney is confident that those can be brought to fruition before any other tariffs land on Canada vis-a-vis the US, and the Canadian economy can diversify. I'll just go to the next slide here. These are just some news articles to show what kind of messaging is going around in both the countries. Here is the official statements. PM Carney's statement is this is taken from the official, let me get that link, guys. Yeah, so this is basically pm.gc.ca, and there's a statement by the Prime Minister. It's like the official government release. So basically Canada will match those tariffs dollar for dollar. Progress has not been enough to meet the objectives for Canadians. Again, this is a very Canadian centric view. So however, last minute changes in the US proposed terms were unfair, uneconomic, and called into question the reliability of any deal. That's a pretty direct statement. PM Carney is basically saying that okay, we can sign something, we don't know if that signature is going to be in pen or pencil. I could not, and to our American audience here, if you do have an official American source like a White House news press release readout or something more official from the US government, please do link it in our comments. I just couldn't find it, so the best thing we did was to get President Trump's Truth Social. Truth? I don't know. Do you call it a tweet if it's on Truth Social? Anyway, I don't know. So Canada wants the benefits of being a state without being one. They've also charged our great farmers for many years massive amounts of tariffs. No more. President DJT. I I don't. Again, he has mentioned some industries, so I guess agriculture has been a sticking point. and Canada has a pretty well-oiled dairy cartel that functions out of Quebec. So I'm not surprised that that was an icky point in all talks. Canada believes in supply control, and I find that pretty annoying, but I can totally see that being a sticky point in any deal. But again, I think those could have just been worked out because they were already worked out by the the renewal package that was actually agreed on in Trump 1.0, right? Like, so I'm not sure why they became so sticky this time when you literally have the same president. There's a different team of people, no doubt. Um, so maybe PM Carney in his statement went so far to say that there was some indication to say that the US team is not on the same page. Again, I wasn't there in that room, so I cannot tell you if that is 100% true or not. This, to conclude my thoughts, this brings, interestingly, this brings Canada US trade relations to almost the same page as India US relations when it comes to trade. The trade deal is going to take time, and Canadians just need to be prepared for it. And in the interim, I think projects worth $500 billion have been approved in terms of infrastructure build out. Of course, you're trying to start supplying oil to the whole country, natural gas to the whole country. It's not going to happen overnight. Minimum turnaround for such a project is 2 years. So, all in all, Canadians need to just be mentally prepared for even more expensive stuff. Uh, yeah, that's what I would like to say. Let's see what happens to Labor Day. 3 weeks is a long time. Actually, 2 weeks is a long time in politics in politics these days. So let's track it and see if the heat can calm down and saner voices start prevailing. But yeah, only time will tell. All right, guys, let's go to the next one. Also not so also not so happy. Um, so for the past couple of weeks, the Korean stock market Kospi has been basically going through a roller coaster, and the reason for that is Kospi is very concentrated. The whole of South Korea, for those who don't understand South Korea maybe in as much detail, is it's very concentrated. There are a few players that are into everything. So they are called chaebols, the conglomerates. They are they allegedly have so many government connections as well that they actively influence policy, and there's a lot of there's a lot of interaction that goes on. But to be fair, I often see South Korean news where you see a CEO and like a high ranking person in all these companies even go to jail and stuff. So I think they have a bit of a balance, but overall there's a few companies that play a major part in the economy. Major as in not 30% major, like 50-60% major. And those are your Samsungs, Hyundai, SK Group. So SK Hynix, whenever you guys hear SK Hynix, it's one of the companies of the SK Group. And they are obviously big chip manufacturers. So is Samsung. I'm not sure if Hyundai is into it, but by and large, there are these 3-4 companies that are heavily weighted in the market, and to the point that there's literally single company funds. So I think it's a fund that basically tracks a single company. So it's basically as good as saying you own stock in that company, but you just have a different label on it. What has happened is China now has rolled out some machinery that is producing. They have rolled out some factories that can be used to produce the lithographic machines. That's what ASML holds a monopoly on in the world, and they are able to basically manufacture their own chip making machines, which will then be used to produce Chinese chips. That means the confidence of the dominance that Korean chip makers have goes down. And that's why the market swung. And now, of course, SK Hynix was one of the big reasons that the market was going down. And now Samsung and SK Hynix are both buying back their stocks to try and prop them up further. Again, it what does it mean for us in North America? It's the same thing that happens with every technology. Over time, the price of owning that technology starts going down. Now we know that token per unit pricing of tokens has been going down over the past few years. The reason memory has been expensive is because there's only a few players in the market that actually produce the memory. And the reason for that is the huge amounts of investment primarily to get the machines that then help them make the memory. Does that mean China overnight starts dominating? No. Samsung, SK Hynix, these are big players in the market. ASML doesn't just go away overnight, but that does mean with more options coming on board, we will probably start seeing memory prices go down in the medium to long run, and we can all hopefully start making our own home labs. Like we used to before the AI hype came in, locked in the memory and made it so expensive for retail owners to own. Now, the second thing is what impact does it have on AI? I think nothing. There is a AI hype cycle that seems to be coming to some sort of a conclusion, but again, the technology will stay. So, JD, what do you think?
Yeah, I mostly agree with all the points. I think, yeah, right now AI is mostly memory constrained, and that's why the prices are so high. Uh, but it's temporary, right? Like they can't stay this high because the memory is a commodity business. It was always a commodity business. It's just a small window in time where they can rake in a lot of money. uh, and it's a capitalistic market, so any other company can come in and produce memory chips for lower cost, and then they would gain some market share. There will be competition in this market. I think it's just a blip. um, but coming back to this specific story, the fears of an AI bubble are growing, but at the same time, we can see that Samsung announced a $79 billion buyback, which was funded by their chip division. So they're doing really great on the hardware side. And yeah, so they are banking on that fact. But the great Asian tech divergence is here. So, what I mean by that is it's interesting how different markets in Asia are reacting differently to AI. So, uh, South Korea, in this case, have been doing really great so far for the past couple of years. It's some people are actually calling it like they are really deep in this AI bubble, and it's partly due to all the chaebols that Abhi mentioned about. So the global investors are increasingly skeptical about these massive AI capital expenditure, uh, and that's making the Asian equity market split into distinct camps. So broad Asian indexes have faced headwinds due to fears that cloud spending is going to cool off. But uh, South Korea, which is a hardware heavy market, is surging 20% up from the summer lows. So, investors are decoupling raw chip makers and memory suppliers from software companies, recognizing that hardware providers profit during the infrastructure build out, regardless of if the consumer side of AI succeeds or not. I want to comment on the Samsung's unprecedented AI capital return. So they are buying back around 65 billion to 70 billion dollars of shares back. Uh, and this is because they are a huge memory supplier, not only to consumer but also to companies like Nvidia. They have something called the high bandwidth memory chip, which is called HBM, that is used in AI accelerators. And that is super expensive and super in demand right now. Uh, Similarly, for SK Hynix, they are also doing really good, but they're doing shares buyback. So they are choosing to reward shareholders rather than hoarding cash reserves or investing it back and building more factories to produce more chips. So who is it benefiting? Obviously the rich families in South Korea, right? um, they are not building out new factories because even they know this is a temporary blip. If they build out factories right now, it'll take 2 to 3 years to come online. By the time they come online, the memory prices would have gone down and they would have missed all the revenue, and whatever revenue they would have gotten would have been used to build the factories, right? So I think this is a good, smart move on their part. um, because in the end, we have to be honest, the AI story is about hardware bottleneck right now. Uh, Anthropic is doing really good, OpenAI is doing really good. They can actually expand even faster, but they're hitting into these hardware bottlenecks. Um, and I think this is a good sign for South Korea. So the South Korea export data shows sustained double digit growth driven heavily by semiconductor shipments. So while software monetization timelines remain uncertain on many platforms, memory manufacturers continue to hold pricing power. So this dynamic establishes advanced chip manufacturing as the primary anchor not subsidizing, stabilizing the Asian technology equities. So yeah, those are my thought. Um,
Let
yeah.
me pull up one chart to show the roller coaster. So this is again from one of the Wall Street Journal ones. So to JD's point, right? Suddenly there is so Kospi index entered a bull market, and it basically rose 20% from a recent low, and that recent low was July 30th. And on Thursday, the past Thursday, there was a 3.6% gain that made it to be about 22% above the July 30 low, which then classifies it as a bull market because the investors' appetite for AI stocks has returned around the world this month. So in South Korea, a surge of shares of Samsung and SK Hynix have helped drive the Kospi gains. Now, to JD's point, what's happening is the big bottleneck is the memory, and now suddenly there is a revived interest. The AI roller coaster is still on. Some days you're feeling like, okay, it's all going to burn to hell, and then the other days you're thinking that this can keep scaling. The real bottleneck is at the hardware level, and the real gains will come from there as well. That's what I personally feel. The software, the AI companies, your Anthropics, OpenAIs, they will either in the long run just get absorbed by the existing software giants in some form or the other, or they'll just have to maybe in general scale down in size, because for them turning a profit is becoming more and more challenging. I think Anthropic is the only one turning a profit. Maybe even they are not. OpenAI definitely. I think there are all these videos past couple of weeks that they are spending 22 cents on per dollar that they are making in revenue. So it's like basically they're burning through all the cash. I think they've already burned through all the cash they expected to burn through for the whole year. So it's just not getting much cheaper for them to be able to, start turning net positive. Ad click through rates are pretty bad. I think they're sitting at 0.94% on ChatGPT. And I think Google Ads, on the other hand, has a click through rate of 29 to 30%. Um, so, yeah, I don't know if. I think there will be IPOs. They will get hyped up. People will buy into these stocks. But eventually, the reality will come down. And again, AI will exist. ChatGPT won't go anywhere. Claude will not go anywhere. But it'll just get absorbed by the companies that have such successful other lines of business that they literally can take unlimited amounts from one side and just put it in AI. Um, Anyways, guys, that's what I think about it. All right, let's go to the last one for the day. JD, kick us off.
Sure. So this is a personal pain point for me. So that's why I selected this story. And I'm sure for many viewers of ours. So the first thing I do whenever I upgrade or buy a new phone is to turn on a call screening feature, because I'm shocked that these unsolicited telemarketing calls is not a solved problem in 2026. It's been a huge issue for me in the US, but it was also same in India also. The only difference is in the US it's some recorded message, and in India it's like some live scammer who is a person who on the other hand who's trying to convince me of something, but the experience is the same. So this is a welcome story for me. So France has completely banned unsolicited telemarketing calls, and citizens can now actually report illegal spammers straight to the government. So this is like a end of cold calling in France, and once France starts, then the rest of the EU will catch on. So France has flipped the script on telemarketing. It's now illegal for companies to make these kind of calls unless consumer explicitly opt in beforehand. So it's not a opt out, it's a opt in. And to enforce this, the government is launching a portal where citizens can easily report spam numbers, and then, companies breaking the rules will be hit with some massive fines and things like that. So it's setting a new standard by outright banning the practice instead of relying on the broken do not call registries, which are very prevalent in the US and India and other places. Um, Now, even though I applaud this, it does have a flip side. Anytime the government gets involved in fixing an issue, I'm always a little skeptical. Like, you can't proclaim you have banned something and the problem will go away. I mean, I can't just say as a government, oh, all robberies are banned. So now there will be no longer thieves. You know, there has to be some kind of a policing mechanism. And I don't trust the government to do that effectively because the incentives are not aligned, right? And I say this because here's the flip side: do not call lists are actually a gold mine for scammers, because providing them with a government verified directory of active working phone numbers. So if they get this list, they know, I mean, which phone numbers to actually call, right? So when a government creates a do not call registry, it inevitably builds a highly valuable asset for international criminals. And then unregulated overseas scammers often acquire these databases because they provide a massive pre-filled directory of active working phone numbers with real people on the other hand. So they don't have to guess. Um, and the sheer volume of spam has fundamentally broken the original utility of the phone number. I mean, I've stopped answering unknown number phone calls. I'll mostly either call people on WhatsApp because I know them, I'll call businesses, uh, like haircuts or laundry or something. But besides that, not so much. Uh, so that's why, like, a very popular proposed tech solution is shifting from a national whitelist system, where only verified essential services can bypass a phone's default block settings. I don't know how well that will work. Again, all these are ideas that look good on paper, but I haven't seen any of them work, because you have to know that most of the scammers are not domestic. Most of the scammers are international organizations, a lot of them based in India, but they just employ cheaper labor, and then they operate in entirely offshore in countries like Morocco or India, where there's less political friction, and that's how they operate. So it's really hard to ban them. It's almost like whack-a-mole. You ban one, they pop up somewhere else. So I don't know how good this ban from France would be, but I mean, I want to keep a optimistic uh, face to it. So yeah, Abhi, your thoughts?
Firstly, I didn't even know. When I read this story, I realized there is this do not call registry in Canada and US both. So I actually just went and put my number on it. I was like, okay, let's see if it even works. To what extent do these calls stop? Because it has, at least over the past few years, gotten very annoying that literally every day you do have some random number calling you and then, you know, trying to sell you some rubbish which you don't care about. The problem is there can sometimes be a genuine call from an unknown number. Like when you issue a book for Vancouver Public Library, they will call you and tell you that we have your book ready, it's on hold, you can come pick it up. And that's a call I would like to have, but mostly, I think almost all the time, I end up ignoring it because I'm thinking it's a spam call and then they go leave a voicemail. I think in in developing parts of the world. So even if we read this story, the Moroccan government is raising issues with this because Moroccans are probably they have a lot of call centers where those are for the telemarketing companies. Now, and since Moroccans speak French, you know, most likely they call up French people a lot for their telemarketing campaigns, and I think those telemarketing campaigns are probably sponsored by French companies, to JD's point, right? So in the developing world there's definitely a need for call centers. I also think though that a call center should not be a long term career option for anyone. Am I saying let's shut down all of them? No, I'm definitely saying that call centers should be only seen as maybe an internship, maybe just as temporary work. You know, you're in college, you're trying to make ends meet, you want some spending money, those kind of things. Okay, you can go and do a job in a call center, but for the most part only the employees of that company who are in the corporate side should have long term careers there. The call center, the people answering the phones, should not be considering that as a long term career because that is brain rot. That is the form of brain rot that probably existed before AI slop came into being. Because you're reading from a script, you're selling garbage products most of the time, and it's a waste of the person's time who's making those calls. And the problem is the people who have to listen to them, they get frustrated, and then their anger is misdirected towards the person calling. So will a ban outright work? There are just so many different ways to bypass all this kind of stuff that okay, France is going to ban. So that means there will be a law which will then define what a telemarketing agency is and someone will just have to prove that I'm not a telemarketing agency, and then they can keep calling for advertisements and everything. There's just it's a law can never be 100% airtight. So it will solve some of the problem. Will it solve all of the problem? Definitely not. Is it a welcome step to outright ban telemarketing calls? I don't know. I just don't think banning anything is a solution to anything, because you ban something, the human mind is such that as soon as you ban it, people actually want to see or interact with it more. For anyone of our audience, if you're parents, if you tell your child to not do something, that's exactly what the child will do first, because they want to see why is it so dangerous to do this, or why are my parents saying no. It's the same thing into adulthood. So I think it's a pretty strong step. uh, Again, a ban will never be perfect. So it's I think having a do not call list, there are just other ways of making this work and keeping things in balance, more or less. And then I think, yeah, just having certain practices, like if you don't if you get a call from an unknown number, it's not in your call registry, don't pick it up. If it's important enough, they will leave a voice message. At the end of the day, companies do need to sell their products. If it's a crap product, they still want to sell it. If it's a really good product, they still need to sell it. So to that extent, if they try to call you, it's not the worst thing in the world. But again, as the person with the phone in their pocket, you always have the choice to decide, do you want to answer that one or not. So I think exercising that will probably go longer than any ban that any government can put. So yeah, I guess guys, that's our session for today. We are at 93 subscribers. So if you guys can help us reach 100 by the end of the month, then the next one that we do, the next episode, the first episode after we reach 100, we will be in person. And that's something that JD and I would like to promise you. JD, what do you think?
Yeah, let's do it. Why not? I would love a live podcast we do together in one location.
All right, everyone, let's make it happen. Thank you for all the love, support. We are at 93, 7 more to go. Let's get there as fast as possible, and you guys will get to see us, in person with each other in the same room. And we will be able to finally prove to you that we are not AI bots who just show up every week and start talking stuff. Anyways, guys, have a great rest of the weekend. Bye bye.
See ya.